Guys, in a few minutes we will talk about fossil fuels and the carbon-dependent nations.
Yesterday, I was thinking about the amount of carbon my family consumes in a single day, and I wondered, how does this affect the planet?
Yes, I've also thought about it, and I did some research. Did you know that a single person's carbon footprint is 7 tons CO2 per year? However, there are some countries that consume a lot more, like the US, with 21 tons per person. In contrast, Malawi consumes 0.2 tons of carbon per person.
Wow, that's huge!
Silence, please. Today, as I've already told you, we are going to see an interesting documentary about the carbon footprint and also the fossil fuel dependent nations. So, without further ado, let's watch it.
Since the Industrial Revolution, the use of carbon and other fossil fuels have made a big impact in our society, economy, and also in our climate. And climate change is possibly the biggest challenge of our generation and the future ones. Scientists attribute this global warming trend observed since the mid 20th century to the human expansion of the greenhouse effect. Warming that results when the atmosphere traps heat radiating from Earth towards space. Certain gases in the atmosphere block heat from escaping. Long-lived gases that remain semi-permanently in the atmosphere and do not respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature are described as forcing climate change. Gases such as water vapor, which respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature, are seen as feedbacks. Fossil fuels are the primary source of energy in the world today, but people start using fossil fuels long before the first steam engine running on coal or the first commercially drilled oil well. Some forms of petroleum, coal, and natural gas were used thousands of years ago by various civilizations on various continents, according to historical records and archaeological finds. However, since we actually have the tools to extract and maximize the use of it in our daily lives, it has generated the biggest dependence on the modern world, even though their bad impact on the climate is already known.
Fossil fuels are fuels made by geological processes acting on ancient dead organisms. These dead organisms were buried hundreds of millions of years ago. The world gets roughly 5/6 of its primary energy from fossil fuels, and this leads to climate change. Fossil fuels are not considered a renewable energy source because they cannot be reproduced at the rate they are consumed. Fossil fuels include coal, oil, and natural gas. Chemically, these fuels are mainly composed of carbon and hydrogen with some oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and a host of other smaller elements. Fossil fuels are used to produce energy. For example, at home, we use fossil fuels to produce heat by burning them. In power stations, we use fossil fuels to produce energy or to produce power engines. The most important thing to produce energy with fossil fuels are the bonds between hydrogen and carbon atoms, because they store energy. Burning them, we produce that these bonds get broken, and that stored energy is converted, for example, in heat energy. The bad thing is that producing this type of energy breaking the bonds, we also form carbon dioxide, CO2, in the process. Now that we know what fossil fuels are and why do we use them, I'm going to explain types of fossil fuels. Probably most of them you will know. The most used fossil fuels are coal, oil, and natural gas. Coal. Coal is a combustible black or brownish black sedimentary rock with a high amount of carbon and hydrocarbons. It contains the energy stored by plants that lived hundreds of millions of years ago in swampy forests. Oil. Oil is a non-renewable fossil fuel. It formed when heat and pressure compressed the main of prehistoric plants, animals, and aquatic life under the bed of the sea or lakes for millions years ago, thus becoming the fossil fuel. Natural gas. Natural gas is a fossil energy source that forms the tip of beneath of the Earth's surface. The largest component of natural gas is the methane, a compound with one carbon atom and four hydrogen atoms.
As we already know, energy sources that are supposed to be in decline remain absolutely essential to our world's economy and security. Oil, coal, and natural gas provide the large majority of the world's energy. For example, in Europe, they supply 81% of energy demanded in 2020. And if we don't change our ways and decrease the demand on fossil fuels, at the same time we increase the production of renewable energies, the dependence of the economy on those countries will multiply. Some countries that have more oil reserves in the world are Canada, Russia, Venezuela, and the Middle East countries. There are some organizations like the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, formed by countries like Iraq, Kuwait, Russia, Venezuela, etc., that on September 2018 the 13 member countries accounted for an estimated 44% of global oil production and an 81.5% of world's proven oil reserves, giving OPEC a major influence on global oil prices. The dependence on fossil fuels is a reality. Everywhere we look, there is going to be something done by fossil fuels. As we explained before, there are some countries that control the production and prices, which are making them feel like gods, who control the economy of industries, transports, energy sources, and whole countries. If we take a look to some graphics, we can observe how the emissions are highly increasing year by year since the second industrial revolution. And also, we could add how the most powerful countries in the world depend on those who have the big reserves. And not going too far, they triggered to all of the current wars in the Middle East. On this other graphic, we can see how the relative change of annual emissions has been from 1750 to current data. For example, Argentina emits 14,000 times more than 200 years ago and is increasing. Fossil fuels are not forever. It's only left 114 years of coal reserves and half of a century to start getting scared of oil. Humankind is already getting addicted to fossil fuels, and there are some private organizations that are covering our eyes so we still consume and emit those atrocities. And we need to change now.
Okay, what have you learned about it?
I've learned that 114 years from now, there won't be any coal reserves, and 54 years from now, there won't be any natural gas left. The main problem isn't the amount left, but the impact of the emissions will cause in the near future.
I did not know that Canada was the country that emits the most emissions per person, and that Russia has the biggest reserves.
Okay, nice class. Have a great weekend.